Yeah, it's Poppin' Peeps, Typhosion787 here today, and as you all know, from the name of my channel and several of the videos that I've made, I am a huge fan of the Pokemon franchise. Yes, I acknowledge that none of the games are perfect, and they all have very many, extreme amounts of flaws, but at the same time, it's always just been a series that I can have fun with. And one of the most fun things about Pokemon is the challenges that are self-imposed. The most popular form is the Nuzlocke. Now, current Nuzlocke rules, there are only two mandatory rules, being that you can only catch the first Pokemon you find on every route, and if a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead and cannot be used in battle anymore. And these make it to where you can lose a Pokemon game under those conditions because the fact that it's a self-imposed challenge. Now, there are things that you can do to restrict yourself less or more. Like I know something I did at the beginning when I was just starting to Nuzlocke is that when I was grinding, if I was grinding and a Pokemon died, I would just, if it was to a wild Pokemon that it died when grinding, I would let it live, because having to switch Pokemon and grind another in the middle of grinding that one Pokemon that died just really didn't appeal to me, and it still really doesn't, but I've gotten better as a Nuzlocker, and I've changed my rules, and also there are more restrictions that you can place on yourself to make it harder. Like, I know that something me and a lot of other people like to do is no healing items in battle, set mode. I put soft level caps on myself because most of the Pokemon games I play, I mostly Nuzlocke hacks. Those hacks, I'm normally going in blind, and all I know for the trainers is the gym leader's typings, and I construct a team around that and such. And as a result, it's really fun. But there are different variants of Nuzlockes that make the game vary in difficulty, more or less. And a lot of them are very flawed in more ways than a normal Nuzlocke would be. Now, there are three different variants I'm going to be talking about. The Egglocke, the Randomizer, and the Wonderlocke formats. And Wonderlocke, also known as Surprise Lock currently, because Surprise Trading is a new name for Wonder Trading in Gen 8. But, starting with the Randomizer, who doesn't love watching people do randomizers? Just seeing someone get a random Pokemon. But at the same time, getting randomizers means there's much less strategy involved. You don't have to plan nearly anything out, and oftentimes, even if you want to, or actually all the time, even if you want to, unless you've played the exact same randomizer before, the exact same randomized file, and know the exact trainer that you're about to face, you can't prepare for it. If you're going in blind to a randomizer, there's no preparation, and that is one of the things that makes a Nuzlocke fun. Being able to prepare for situations before you are put in said situations, and seeing if you can get out of them successfully. And in a randomizer, it just completely nullifies that by making sure that you have no idea what to expect. Along with that your own Pokemon are randomized as well, not just the enemies. So you could just, for instance, a randomizer I did not too long ago, I got a Palkia on the third route. I actually somehow caught it, first Pokeball at that. And sure, it died to a Shuckle using Bide because I wasn't reading the text boxes. But it was the only Pokemon that was ever doing anything. It was the only Pokemon ever being sent out into battle until it was killed by that Shuckle. And this applies to quite a lot when it comes to the randomizer format, and why I simply don't think it's nearly as fun as I used to. Sure, it's cool to see Pokemon that you normally wouldn't see, and you normally wouldn't be able to use, but at the same time, you could either make the game so easy through getting some of the better Pokemon, or make it so much more unbearably difficult, which, why not just do a normal Nuzlocke with more and more restrictions, so it will still maintain that difficulty without having even more randomness than Pokemon already has, which Pokemon already has a lot of randomness in it. There's the 1 in, I believe, 16 chance to crit on most moves. There's side effect or secondary effects to moves, like Flamethrower, for instance, has a chance to burn. Icy One guaranteed lowers speed. Powder Snow can freeze. Things like that. And even abilities play a huge role in it. And sure, you can randomize certain things, you can choose not to randomize certain things, but even if you choose not to randomize the opponent's Pokemon, oftentimes that makes it easier for you because you still know what they have, yet you are often, through randomizers, through sheer luck, you can have an absolutely amazing team and just tear through the game, which is just not fun for me personally. The extra randomness makes strategy go mostly completely out the window. It makes the game a lot less consistent and a lot less fun, in my opinion, for a randomizer. Now, Egglocks. Okay, an Egglocke is like a Nuzlocke, but every single Pokemon that you have to trade it out for an egg and a PC. Now, this has to be done on a save file that has already been saved and has had the eggs hacked in with whatever moves that the Pokemon will have upon hatching through a source like PK Hex, for example. And this, I'm doing one right now. In Fire Red Omega, I just need to get through the Victory Road and I'll be at the Elite Four and Champion. But Egglocke's, this is the furthest I've made it in quite a while from my Nuzlocks, and it's not fun for me. I've gotten so far with so few deaths, and those few deaths were actually all on my part due to errors. I let a slow Pokemon get crit. I let Alakazam stay in on a Tentacruel that had Mirror Code after it was already only at 7 HP from a Crobat Shadow Ball. I didn't think that Koga's Weezing would have Fire Blast, and it killed my Scizor after it set up 3 Sword Stances. All those deaths were my fault, yes. But at the same time, I've still had very few deaths, because with an Egglocke, it's like a randomizer in a way, except sometimes you are able to control better, and it won't be as random, but there will still be randomness involved in certain situations. It's even more overpowered than a lot of the things you would get in randomizers, because things like egg moves, like an Elemental Punch Alakazam that has Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, and Psychic, in the Gens 2 and 3 games, it will just tear through everything, no questions, and you don't even really need any other Pokemon. Those 4 types can pretty much reliably wipe out essentially every single Pokemon there is. So it makes things like solo running a lot easier, and it makes it to where since you have a lot more to work with, there's not the satisfaction of knowing that you have increasingly less opportunities, because instead you're given increasingly more opportunities, and the benefit significantly outweighs the detriment. The risk is minimized completely, and the reward is insane. Now with Nuzlocks, the normal Nuzlocke variant, it's about even. There's a lot of risk that goes involved. There's a lot of reward that can come from the risks. And that is what makes Nuzlocke fun. Pokemon will always have that bit of randomness, so nothing will ever be completely consistent. Nuzlocke included. Several people lose Nuzlocke due to one stray crit, leading to a snowball effect of the Pokemon dying, like if a Moxie Crocodile, for example, gets hit, or if you hit an Anger Point Crocodile with a critical hit yourself, it can make it to where, boom, your entire team wipes. But by increasing the randomness and making the game more inconsistent, or making the game, or not changing the consistency of the game, but being able to have tools that are significantly more powerful than what you'd have otherwise, giving you a much higher advantage, a much better advantage against your opponent that you would not normally have in a different Nuzlocke setting, it's just not as fun to me. And the same logic that applies to the Egglocke and Randomizer applies to the Wonderlocke as well. I used to be all about Wonderlocks. They were really fun for me to do, and I just couldn't get enough. But as I kept playing more and more, not only did I just get burnt out from it, but I started realizing that it was getting increasingly, extremely easier. Not just because of the fact that I was becoming a better player, learning how to play around more things, and just overall doing much better when it came to overall game knowledge, but at the same time, I learned how to overcome the randomness if it was bad, and learned how to abuse it much better when the randomness ended up in my favor. And as a result, the fun factor significantly decreased with each time I did a Wonderlocke. Because when you add a randomness, it's a double-edged sword. It can make something a lot more fun, but it can also make it a lot more difficult. I mean, a lot less fun, not a lot more difficult. And that is really the main flaw with these Nuzlocke formats. Because there's little to no strategy involved often. You are given so little to work with that you can't do anything, or so much to work with that you don't need to plan anything through most of the time. Like, I'm currently doing a Platinum Nuzlocke on a normal copy on my 2DS of Pokemon Platinum, and my strategy for the first gym was a Bibarel. I set up 3 defense curls because it had the simple ability, used Water Gun to KO Rourk's, Onix, and Geodude, used Growl 3 times on Cranidos, and Water Gunned a few times, even surviving a crit. And that was probably one of the moments in Nuzlocke that I feel best about, because that was just a normal Nuzlocke. I worked with what I had, and it worked brilliantly. I just thought out what to do, a plan in my head, with the soft level cap that I had implemented, and I thought, what would work well here so I don't have any deaths? And it went perfectly. And I got a significant higher amount of satisfaction from that than I do planning something out when I have much more to work with. And if I want to make it more difficult and make it to where, for me, it would be even more fun due to the higher amount of restrictions, why not just not risk it being easier through increasing randomness, but rather place more restrictions on myself? Like, another thing that I've started doing recently, I've limited myself to only using 1 water type on a team and 1 dragon type on a team. And a lot of times I will only allow myself to use 1 of either type, because oftentimes dragon types can learn surf. And the reason for that is Certain types are just way too good if you are able to have multiple. Like, if you have, for instance, water types, like, if you have a Kingdra, a Gyarados, and a Quagsire, you're, like, Kingdra is neutral to both grass and electric. Gyarados is neutral to grass. Quagsire is immune to electric. Ludicolo for a water and grass type to be neutral to both, along with dealing with other water types. Lantern with Volt Absorb to be able to deal with electric types as well, while also providing really good coverage. Like, just those 5 Pokemon, and if you can even put Rotom-Wash in there in Gens 5, 6, 7, and 8. And adding Rotom-Wash just makes your team even more versatile because it gives a Levitate user. And as a result, like, just adding all these different water types that work so well together when it comes to team chemistry makes a game really just extremely trivial. Like, even Renegade Platinum, a fucking Drayano hack. You know, Drayano 60, one of the best ROM hackers in video game history, who makes some of the most difficult ROM hacks of Pokemon games out there. And this hack of Pokemon Platinum that increased the difficulty extremely high. I reset after beating Fantina because all that was left was all my water types, and from that moment on, I just steamrolled throughout everything, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to face Fantina. I don't want to face Maylene, not Fantina. I don't want to go further in the game. It just feels cheap to be using this. But I had no other option, so I just restarted my file. So I don't count that as a true loss because I still had a ton of Pokemon left. It's just, with the water types, the game wasn't fun for me because it was so easy to create really overpowered teams. And that's why I imposed the restriction on myself. The thing about Nuzlocke is that you can control the restrictions because the restrictions are self-imposed. The Nuzlocke itself is a self-imposed challenge that you don't have to do if you don't want to. And for me, at least, adding the randomness factor from Egglocks, Randomizers, and Wonderlocks just really decreases the amount of enjoyment I have when playing through a Pokemon game, where normal Nuzlocks make it much more fun. A form of another alternative to a Nuzlocke that has gone over people's heads for the most part is something called a Wonderlocke, where basically it's like a Nuzlocke, but there's across your 6 Pokemon there's 3 pairs of 2, and between those 3 pairs you can only switch between those 2 Pokemon, and unless you're roared out, then you can only use the pair that your Pokemon is roared out into. But only being able to switch between 2 Pokemon throughout an entire battle can make it much more difficult, along with much more fun. And in my opinion, that is what makes Nuzlocke so good, because that's a form of Nuzlocke that adds more restrictions without adding more randomness, and as a result, instead of being less fun, it is, in my opinion, the most fun form of Nuzlocking that there is. Nuzlocks in themselves, in and of themselves, are often very flawed, and sure, slapping on a ton of restrictions won't necessarily help. But if you put enough restrictions on to where it doesn't feel overbearing for one, but you don't put on too little to where you just completely steamroll the game, there should be no need for anything like a Randomizer, an Egglocke, or a Wonderlocke. And just removing the strategy in and of itself, strategy, like, being someone who's gotten into competitive Pokemon a lot recently, with me finding my Level of the Pokabilities metagame since the summer, my competitive mind for Pokemon has just got me to think a lot more during my Nuzlocke playthroughs, and just seeing how much easier and more random it is, it's much less fun because it gets to use my analytical mind far less. And I've stated this many times, but it's not as fun for me because it's not as consistent. Like, you could have a completely random set of Pokemon each and every playthrough. And sure, that could result in some unique strategies. But at the end of the day, increasing the randomness, at least in my opinion, just isn't fun. It makes the game just feel skewed in my favor. It doesn't feel rewarding anymore. And that's why I don't really like and that's why I don't really like the Egglocke Randomizer and Wonderlocke variants of Nuzlocke, and I just prefer the normal Nuzlocke and the Wetlock as well. Anyways, guys, this has been Typhlosion787. I hope you enjoyed this video on the Nuzlocks. I know that on the different forms of Nuzlocke. I know that this was a bit of a different video from a lot of the things that I've been doing recently. My channel is not going to stay consistent to one specific topic, but I hope you enjoyed. This has been Typhlosion787, and I'm out of the house. Bye!